revenue to the Bermuda government. That's not the only form of consumer taxes that we have, the consumption taxes that we have. If we add it all up, it's $404 million in consumption taxes. Labor taxes, we've got a payroll tax and the work permits. That combined is $481 million. And our capital taxes, I think a lot of Bermudians will be very surprised at actually how much we are taxing capital. Land tax is the biggest one, $85 million. International companies are contributing $65 million in fees to the Bermuda government. All of that's considered capital taxes. All in capital taxes at $201 million. So this is 2019 was the last year we had prior to COVID, before COVID seriously distorted the numbers. So that's why we're looking at 2019. So the total government revenues, just over $1 billion, $1,086 million, right? So the, in terms of the breakdown, 19% is going towards capital taxes in Bermuda, 37% towards consumption taxes that are highly regressive, impacting low-income Bermudians more than high-income, and labor taxes at 44%. So this is just to show you how this has changed over time in Bermuda since 1990 on an annual basis. Our capital taxes have actually been, on a percentage basis, very, very stable as a form of taxation in Bermuda. Our reliance on consumption taxes has actually declined as labor taxes, as the payroll tax has gone up. We've had some cuts in custom duties. So labor as a share has been increasing, but it's still now only 44%, and it just went above consumption tax as the major contributor to Bermuda government revenues in 2016. Prior to that, consumption taxes were the highest form of
All right, Robert?
Can I just show one more slide?
You can, and that was your alarm, and you can pick it up and build on it as we go on.
But very quickly. So this is how we compare internationally. This is countries in Europe. The EU breaks all of these taxes down using exactly the same methodology that I've used here. So Bermuda's consumption taxes at 37%. These are taxes that feed right the way through to the customers' the retail prices in Bermuda. So because we're taxing our consumption at 37%, it's automatically causing a higher cost of living in Bermuda for businesses, for individuals. And this is so this is consumption taxes in other countries as a percentage of overall government revenue. And this is how we compare all three categories versus these other countries. We're lightly taxing capital, we're not taxing capital income, and we're overtaxing consumption.
All right, we'll take a break there with you, and let's now hear the initial presentation by Dr. Lou Simmons.
I'm going to give somewhat of a scenario with the aim of, because I'm keen on both of the presentations, given the statistical importance of both of those presentations. My focus is on stakeholder capitalism. And when Rick asked that opening question, I spoke and said environment, the social, and of course governance. We'll have challenges with those areas, of course, if we do not do something with the cost of living. If we don't reduce the cost of living in Bermuda, we can be assured that you'll see increased challenges in those areas of the environment, social issues, and governance. And I was reading this book by Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum that talks about stakeholder capitalism. And had me thinking of Bermuda, given some of the conversations that we've been having for the last year about cost of living and solutions and things. And if you look into the union's book, there are 16 recommendations that are made that are there that can be put as solutions. But he defines it as the capacity of the private sector to harness the innovative, creative power of individuals and teams to generate long-term value for shareholders, and I interpret shareholders in this context as community members, for all members of society, and for the planet. And in the context of the planet, I'm also thinking of our island, Bermuda, where we share as companies are pressed not only to communicate societal value, but also to report in a transparent and regular manner their progress against environmental, social, and government challenges. Right? And I said, well, where is this happening in Bermuda? Is this happening anywhere in Bermuda on a microcosm type of level? Where is it going on in Bermuda? And interestingly, in June 4th, 2022 of this year, obviously, what caught my attention was GORMS. The partnership that GORMS took on with Western Star Sports Club. Now, my GORMS is a corporation, local. And they went into partnership, the MP at the time, they approved a 99-year lease for a piece of land in Pembroke to support a nearby sports club. And of course, the sports club, as we know in the community, is associated with, of course, the same thing we're all dealing with. There are fluctuations of socioeconomic levels in that vicinity, in that region of Bermuda. And the Colonel Burke, the Minister of Public Works, he said, under the agreement, GORMS Limited would receive a lease for a 0.61 acre stretch of land next to St. John's Road business to improve access for customers. Those are citizens of Bermuda, but certainly of that community. That's an investment for the community, a corporation going into partnership with a community agency that services families and communities, looking out for the best interests, petitioning a piece of land for their benefit, but also for the surrounding community. How? In return, GORMS said they would, as a company, they pledged to invest more than $550,000 in improvements to St. John's Field. And if you go around St. John's, you see some of the developments. And you will see in Western Star Sports Club. That's part of the investment. And under the draft lease agreement, GORMS would invest at least $350,000 into regrading and resurfacing the field to help address flooding and all of that, along with a minimum of $150,000 to rebuild the Western Star Sports Club. Right? The company will also be required to contribute up to $45,000 to assist with the cost of the preparation of plans and reports for a boundary wall, $7,500 for surveys and assistance for additions to the existing clubhouse, and $5,000 for marketing to support the project. All of that had me thinking of conversations, Chris and the guys we've been having for the last few months about, of course, corporate tax. Right? We talked about corporate tax. And if you look at the recommendations, one of the things I think also, Robert, some of the things you pointed out just now speaks to this here. Right? But we talk about we need changes to the tax structure to support even some of the things of this, in this context, that a GORMS has going on with a Western Star Sports Club. So I give the vision. Imagine, parish by parish, and we know that our social clubs are associated with a lot of societal issues that flood into the broader community. They are directly and indirectly associated with it. When you look at the socioeconomic status of families, you see different class fluctuations in parish by parish, but associated with those clubs. So when you think in terms of what you were just saying in terms of the taxation, who benefits the most and who does not, right? They're all the same community. But there's a great opportunity in this particular model as we talk about the tax changes and coming up with a new tax structure. And the union has this as a strong recommendation that I'm very supportive of. And I see in this scenario that Gorhams has with Western Stars Sports Club a type of scenario that I can see rippling across this island to transform community, but also to bring into the discussion, how do we reduce cost of living? How do we alleviate this issue of poverty in Bermuda? I believe stakeholder capitalism, meaning private and public, working together in the interests of Bermuda, can help to alleviate and eliminate, providing we take on this new business model that Klaus in the World Economic Forum talks about. These are the challenges, or some of the challenges, that we would have to think about and consider. And it's something that I look forward to us discussing even more in the context of both presentations shared by Chris and Robert, when we talk about new tax structures for Bermuda, for its citizens and corporations. With that also is looking at, and probably in the next part of the conversation, Rick,
Sure.
is looking at what role does income-based approach take to this, as well as the cost-based approach in terms of reducing cost of living. Those are some of the subject matter that we need to look at.
So I'd like to take off from what you've just said, Dr. Liu, and we all want to see a change. 50 years ago, that ministerial council had these recommendations.
Yeah.
So I was browsing through one of the books that I take a look at. One of them is The 7 Cultures of Capitalism. There's a quote from one of the original economists some years ago, and I want you to opine on this, because we're talking about bringing about change 50 years ago. And the quote is this: "It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interest." So, from what you've just said, Lou, there's interest and interest and interest. Can we replicate or duplicate that to start to bring about change? Not just more interest on one side than the other, because that there has to be a balance. But how do we look at a quote like this? It's not on benevolence, it's on self-interest. Robert?
Yeah, this is, I'm glad you raised stakeholder capitalism, because this is a very important issue for Bermudians to understand. Obviously, you know, what's happening here in Bermuda is extreme, but we're having similar economic problems, certainly across the Western world, much around the world. So, you know, there are all sorts of, you know, reasons that are common around the world for it. One of them, and funnily enough, it's showing up in the surveys of the public, their lack of trust. Their lack of trust in politicians, and their lack of trust in, we have to be specific here, big business. Small business, which Gorhams would be on the small side, local, right? They have very high levels of trust. They're some of the small business people are some of the most trusted people in society. But so, you know, obviously we have a problem with our democracies. We have a problem with the way our governments are functioning. The CEO of J.P. Morgan. And they came out in their annual meeting, they came out with a statement saying that it was time for corporate America to move from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. And under shareholder capitalism, which had become very prevalent worldwide after Reagan and Thatcher, and the influence of Milton Friedman and other people, talking about self-interest, right?
Yes.
Okay, so stakeholder capitalism recognizes that that kind of behavior, that kind of thinking by business people, by big business particularly, is very destructive globally. So Jamie Dimon and the Business Roundtable said, look, we have to move to stakeholder capitalism where the business decisions are being made not just in the interest of the shareholder. Previously, they were made solely on the basis of the shareholder. Now we have to make decisions taking into consideration the interest of the shareholder, the interests of our employees, the interests of our customers, and the interests of our communities.
That would take a massive shift in the boardrooms.
Okay, this is already happening.
All right.
Okay, this is why it's so important for people to understand this, right? Okay, so this was 4 years ago, right? 2018.
Yeah.
So ever since then, this is why this movement is actually worldwide is being spearheaded not just by Davos and the United Nations, actually by the owners of these companies, including our reinsurance companies. Right? The owners of these companies are by and large pension funds, and all of these the pension funds. And the biggest investors, BlackRock and the like, they're all saying, look, we expect you, they own the companies, we expect you to adopt this. You've heard of ESG, environmental, social, and the G stands for governance. That's what this is all about, is getting the business people internally within these companies to recognize their responsibilities to their employees, to their customers and their communities. And they have now yardsticks that they have to meet in terms of their positive influence, beneficial impact on the environment and socially. So this is where we can expect not just Gorhams to be contributing these sorts of programs to Bermuda, but all these big businesses, not just the reinsurers, the banks, right? Belka, all of them.
You touched on something, Robert, and I want to move into Brother Chris.
I want us to go to the audience.
If the audience is ready to have a question, and we need somebody, one of our guys directing down below, we have microphones there. If you are ready to go there, please come to the mic, and we will acknowledge you. While we're waiting for our person to come to the mic, Robert touched on something about trust, and trust in the data, trust in the statistics. We often hear that our inflation rate is considerably lower than most jurisdictions, if not all of them. And immediately we hear a reaction on that. We don't feel that out there, and we don't feel that in our pockets. No. How accurate is that? And then we'd like to hear your response from those of you in the hall.
So when we look at the inflation rate, we see, and if we go back probably 40 years ago, I'm sorry. If we go back about maybe 40 years ago, and probably in the late 70s or early 80s, Dr. Ball was around the negotiating table telling the people, the statistical data people who are calculating the consumer price index, they're calculating the basket of goods all wrong. Because when you look at the household expenditure and you compare that to the rate of inflation, that's why Bermuda is in the position it's in right now. Why? The rate of inflation went up like this, but the household expenditure went up like that. That's the problem. Why? Those two should have, remember now, we're talking about 11 household items. We're talking about 11 items, that's the same 11 items that's in the consumer price index. Rent in there, electricity in there, all those items, clothing, food, all that's in there. So no one can explain why the rate of inflation was allowed to do this, and also the expense was allowed to do that. Example. Why was rent allowed to increase by 1,000%? Why? Why? Because they could. Why? We're supposed to have, remember now, we're supposed to have watchdogs, we're supposed to have rent control, and we're supposed to have what? Consumer affairs. Both of their entities were supposed to protect the consumer against price gouging and a number of other things. Never happened. And that's why we're in the predicament we're not. And the information that I've given you shares 1974, 2013, and how CPI went here, the wholesale expansion went there, and that's where the problem came. Over that 39-year period, you'll find you went further, further, and further, and further behind. Now, the next report that's due in 2023, I don't know whether it's going to be 1807, or it's going to be 2100, or 2200. But I know it's been going up by at least $300 to $500 every 10-year period. And unless rents have been stabilized, but rent is the biggest line item. So that's the challenge.
Indeed.
Yeah.
It brings very quickly to the question, will the recent reduction in duty on essential goods make a big enough impact
No.
to bring about relief? On the panel?
No.
And perhaps we can start bringing in
Nobody has a
those inside for things that you've heard. But panelists, in your opinion, recent reduction in duty, which was heralded most recently, will that make a big enough impact to bring about relief? Luke, you talked about social economic impact.
If I reflect on Robert's presentation, the answer is no. When you look at what that is, there's no relief that will be to the more impoverished Bermudian. There's no relief, and I'm reflective when I look at what the relief is in the customs. I go back to even something that Craig Simmons, his scenario. He says, when the person who drives up to the pump in his or her BMW or Mercedes, that person isn't preoccupied with parking their car. They're going to pay the gas. Versus the person who probably doesn't have that, has a family of four they got to feed, is struggling with the rent. That person then has to decide whether or not do I license this vehicle. I got to make some ends meet. And as Chris already stated, we can expect, and Robert even stated, we can expect that if things go on the way they are right now, you can rest assured that the gap will widen between the have and the have-nots in Bermuda. And when you talk about environment and the social issues and challenges to governance, if you think you have some social issues that are problems now, wait until later.
Just real quick. You have Bermuda Digest of Statistics, 2021. On page number I can't find the page now. On page number
On a bit to find, we've got Glenn Fubler, who has a question or a comment.
Okay, on page number 60 and 61, you'll find about 72 food items. 72. Okay? I'm going to pick the group of food items, and I want to say it's about 10 of them, and it could be 11. Baby food is item number 37. From 2011 to 2020, it went up by 91.1%. No, I'm sorry, 94.1%. These 11 items overall went up by 421% from 2011 to 2020. This is the latest book. We don't have the 22 book yet. This is 2021, and it's the information up to 2020. So what's happened to the prices in 21? What's happened to the prices in 22? So we have to get serious about, it's a joke. 21 items? We need to bring down the whole basket of good items by at least 20 to 25%. And if you can do that, stop wasting time.
Glenn?
Yes, good evening, everybody. First of all, I'd like to offer kudos to the BIU for hosting this evening of discussion. Let's just give them a round of applause. And then you can see Brother Chris really shines when it comes down to those numbers. He really gets into those numbers. And the piece that I want to say is that when we think about unions on a certain level, we would say, well, unions are in the interest of just their members. But in this leadership that's being offered by the BIU, they're coming holistically. They're looking at the big picture. And looking at the big picture is what it's all about. And so let's give them another round of applause for looking at that big picture. On Brother Stubbs' comments a little earlier about Jamie Dimon and that group there, I would refer him, and I'm not an economist in any way, mind you, but I would refer him to the RAND Corporation study. You may be familiar with it. RAND Corporation did a study. People who don't know RAND, that's a premier think tank which does a lot of work for the U.S. government. So it's considered to be a conservative assessment, but they did an assessment on living standards over the last 40 years in the United States, mind you. And in that 40-year period, which dates back to the years of Reagan and Thatcher, in that 40-year period, they've seen a transfer of wealth that they calculate to be $50 trillion from the 90% or the working class and the middle classes, a transfer of $50 trillion from the people over to those corporations. And so that's available if you want to get out your Google and check that out. I don't know if Stubbs has seen that study. But I just want to say, too, I just want to ask Brother Chris a question, reference, because I heard him earlier talking about this a couple of weeks ago. He noted that 2 countries have been able to improve that deficit, that gap. I think he mentioned Ireland, and what's the other country, Norway?
That's correct.
Whether or not you had, just give us a nutshell of what sorts of things that they do in that regard. I might have missed it earlier, but that's just the question I had.
Thank you for your input.
So, suddenly, and this is the 2-page ad that the BIU took out in the World Gazette on May 31st, 2022. And on page 2 of that ad, we looked at Switzerland, we looked at Norway, and we looked at Ireland. And what we saw was that in 2010, Norway's cost of living was 161. That's what it was in 2010. And in 2022, it's now 100. They moved it by 61 percentage points. What did they do? And I'm going to profess, I'm not sure exactly what they did. You go up in Google Numbeo, and they'll tell you, if you look at 2010, you can pull up the rents, you can pull up food, you can pull up everything, and it'll go year by year, and it'll show you exactly what changed. Ireland also changed. Theirs went from 119 down to 76. Theirs changed by about 40 points. If those 2 industrialized countries around the world recognized that the cost of living was too high and they need to fix it, they done it over a period of time between 2010 and 2022. 60% and 40% respectively, wrong figures. You heard me say earlier, if Bermuda's cost of living index is at 146, that's percent. Okay? The economists over here correct me when I say something wrong, okay? If the index is supposed to be 100, why are we at 146? There's only two countries in the world right now who have an index over 100. Switzerland and Bermuda. The only two countries. Every other country, there's 137 countries in that report, and only Bermuda and Switzerland are over 100. All the others are 100 and under. Why? When you go to city, there's 532 countries in that report. Only 10 countries, only 10, have a cost of living higher than 100 out of 532 countries. All the rest are under 100. Look, I'm not making this up. This is the data. The facts are the facts. And it's time for us to have, like we said earlier, real conversations about the need to do what is right.
Good time to note that this is the first of 4 of these meetings, and we look to increase our participation not just online, but in the hall. So we will be at the Clearwater Middle School next, October 13th, that's Thursday.
And just while we're entertaining the question from Brother Larry, this is 11 items in the household expenditure: food, alcohol, clothing, housing, fuel and power, household, transportation, education, travel, medical, and miscellaneous. Number 1, education went up from 1974 to 2013, went up by 1,586%. That's number 1. Medical is number 2. They went up by 1,532%. A lot of people think food has outstripped everything. Up until 2013, you're wrong. That number, out of 11, that number 10. 445%. The only group, the only group that's under them is clothing, which is 377%. Everyone else is above them. I gave you the 3 top ones because it's interesting, because healthcare costs is expensive. We understand people get sick, premiums go up, got that. But once again, we should be able to, as Mr. Stubbs said, if the fiscal responsibility department has told the government, the UBP, the ABA, and the PLP, fix your tax structure. Furthermore, bite the bullet and get it done. That's what they tell them. Those are the words. Bite the bullet, get it done. In 2019, 3 years ago. What are we waiting for? There's no way we can reduce the cost of living in Bermuda unless we first of all get a tax structure that's correct. We have to do that first. If you can't put a decent tax structure in place, you're not going to be able to offer, rather it's healthcare costs at 50%, free healthcare costs, or free education. All of those programs come from a better tax structure. Because as I tell some, I'm not an economist. But when you tell me the government takes enough money to run the government, you could never convince me of that. Never. Why? We got 11 government departments, and it could be, let's say 13. 2 of them make money, the other 11 lose money. So how are they taking enough money to run the government? How? Something's wrong with that picture.
For the rest of that thought,
Sure.
President Chris, we have a question, gentleman in front of the mic, and then the lady. The lady has the mic, or the mic is with the gentleman. Sir, your comment, your question.
Comment. You did make a question to the panel in terms of urgency at the beginning, I think.
Yes.
And I go back to an article in The Economist some 9 years ago, which the article said the world is ripe for rebellion. That's enough urgency right there, I think. You know, people don't start revolutions, conditions do. And we're in that area now. The opulence of the wealthy can be viewed by the touch of a mouse or the swipe on a tablet. That's where we are today. The American Revolution started, they say the catalyst was the tax on tea. That's a food item. The French Revolution was bread. It's very few citizens that eat more bread than the French. And thus came the slogan, "Off with their head," and which made the guillotine popular. I'm not here to solicit revolutions.
Indeed.
I'm here to bring attention to the urgency which you spoke of earlier.
Yes.
It needs to be done now, and I think the panelists have made that quite clear. Also, when we're looking at the tax structure, I came across something by Robert Reich, former U.S. Labor Secretary, and he talked about windfall tax. I'm not sure I'm an authority on this, but maybe one of your panelists or a few of your panelists knows it. Windfall profit tax, which speaks on if you are making unusual amount of profit because of war, because of casualty, catastrophes, or whatever the case may be, then that would address or speak to your profit. In which case, maybe that speaks more to manufacturing companies as opposed to consumer-based companies. Maybe your economists or panelists can speak to that. Again, I'm not an economist, but certainly when we're talking about price gouging, which many in the world are thinking is going on today, many people around the world, even some of the people in media are speaking on, maybe that can look to the opportunistic price gouging that we are perceiving, which is going on today. So my question to the panelists would be, how would windfall tax, profit tax, who will we see being categorized to fit in that category as to how we should, as a partial tax structure?
Thank you. Let's start. Anyone? Panelists?
Would you like me to comment?
Yes. Robert?
Windfall profit taxes are they're typically imposed at times like with war in the Ukraine.
Short term, yeah.
Or if you had a situation, the Iraq War, oil going through the roof, or say oil embargo by OPEC.
Or Ukraine, as we have known.
Yeah, so then windfall profit tax is referring to the government stepping in and imposing a abnormal profit tax on these companies, the sector that is making abnormal profits, right? There's another, I think there's a bigger problem in Bermuda. There's a suspicion that some companies are making supernormal, abnormal profits. Mm-hmm. Too much. The banks, Belka, and others. So what's used internationally as a means of addressing that prospect, because you are talking about something that is a major economic problem worldwide, is the uncompetitive pricing of certain companies.
Yeah.
And the studies have shown that some 30 to 40% of industries are likely to be engaged in this type of thing. I actually did a study of Bermuda's, and based on the data that I was looking at, there was like 3 industries that stood out. But the way countries are addressing this, Canada does it. The only place that really doesn't is the United States. It's all through South America. It's all through Europe. The UK does it. They set up these competitive market authority programs. And you have highly qualified people looking at the companies, looking at their pricing. And in the UK, just about what happens is if there's suspicious activity, they then announce that they're doing a full-scale investigation of the industry. And this has happened to virtually every single industry in the UK. Banking, online dating, virtually everything.
So it also refers to catastrophes too. So if we I guess we're in the reinsurance business, and then we have catastrophes around the world. Would they be a part of this?
Well, they look at the they look at the insurance industry. They look at every single industry. Now, the problem with us doing it is you have to have highly qualified people doing it, and it's expensive, right? So it's going to be difficult for Bermuda to do that. People already complain about the size of the BMA and how expensive it is, right? But I don't see why something couldn't be put together. In the Channel Islands, Jersey and Guernsey, I think they've experienced some trouble. Disagreement between the two of them, but originally they set up a single body to monitor the markets in both islands, and theoretically there's no reason why that couldn't be done with ourselves and say the overseas territories. Lack of competitive pricing is it's a problem everywhere, but it's a particular problem in small jurisdictions. So perhaps something could be set up where a single body is looking at Bermuda, Cayman, BVI, Gibraltar, all the overseas territories.
Also, you mentioned about taxing rents. With rents being also high, wouldn't that be passed on to the tenants?
Yes, it is, and that's the problem with taxes get very tricky. So pretty much everyone will pass on increased taxation to whoever they can. So that means that corporations, they have customers. They typically, if the market conditions allow it, they just pass on the cost to customers, right?
Oh.
Now, if we're imposing greater taxation on corporations, particularly bigger ones in Bermuda, if their customers are overseas, and Cayman has done this, right? If their customers are overseas, it means their overseas customers are paying higher prices. Effectively, you get foreigners to pay a portion of your taxes for you. But in the instance of property, the landlord typically passes it on to the tenant. Now, I don't think we should be stopping them from doing that. You have to allow, if people who are going to be designing a new tax system for Bermuda, they'll take all of this into consideration. And you have to allow things to adjust. And, if we say to the landlords, I'll be quite frank with you, big reason why 2019's tax reform, 2018 in 2019, but when they went to implement it, wasn't passed, it all fell apart, was because MPs in the House, particularly PLP MPs, who own properties with a tenant, did not want their rents taxed. Right?
If you're saying, if you said to them, is that a statement? Is that a comment?
Well, there was severe resistance amongst these people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, one of the first stages of the tax reform was the property owners and the commercial property owners in Hamilton. They had to pay higher fees, right? And they would have passed that on to the wealthy tenants. Yeah, IB companies, right? You have to allow landlords to do that. We've got a major problem with the cost of housing. There's no question about it.
And the cost of mortgages.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have another question just before we go.
Last thing is, I'm just going to say the last thing.
As they're answering, I want to make sure that we also get the other questions in. The lady had her hand up, so you want to wind up on that?
And we've got one online that wants to answer to a question. So,
Yeah.
This is the last one. You're familiar with the Robin Hood tax, where dividends are taxed and for people that do shareholding and whatever the case may be, and it's that particular part is also taxed.
Yeah.
You mean shareholders, their dividends?
Shareholders,
Yeah, I mean, this is what the IMF and the Fiscal Responsibility Panel has advocated very strongly for Bermuda, that we tax. Other countries have done this. They had tax systems like ours, and they've moved in this direction. And they tax capital income, they tax financial assets, they tax rents. There's
So the other question.
Yes. Let's go to the lady that had her hand up. You're still looking, yes, to ask the question. If we can get the mic.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I have one question. One point that Mr. Simmons made about these stakeholders. I'm thinking, I counted up $500,000 that I understand from you that Gomes investing in Dandy Farm. But they have a 99-year lease. $250,000 compared to a 99 lease is, to me, chicken feed. Because the Dandy Farm be hooked to keep it open and open and open for years and years. So is Gorham going to be a permanent supporter of Dandy Farm? So that it's basically even. Because the little bit I know about business is that no business is in it, really. For a loss, yes. And they're going to make sure that they get the most out of it. But with Dundee Town only get $250,000 when they finish renovating it. So I would advise the government to be very careful how they write these contracts. Because businesses are out to steal, do what is best for them.
In their interest.
So, yeah, right now they're investing $250,000. Okay, how long is that war gonna last? And I can't see them building a new house or something, if I understand it. Clubhouse for $100,000. And we can't even get.
It was 150, but still, it's only 50,000 a year, right?
We can't even build out any house, a decent house. Right? I don't have to say any more about that.
Yes.
You get the message. So what I'm saying is that can you make sure when you finish all your contracts in the stakeholders that it's a continual, permanent, as long as their company is operating and they don't do any trick stuff like changing shareholders and changing company names and all that to get out of that. I don't know how it is, but I know the devil works out a lot of ways to get out of what they got to do. Yeah. So I would advise the government to be very careful.
Thank you very much. There is a question online, but
I haven't finished.
Okay, go on.
The next
I'm sorry.
The next point I'd like to make is, and it sounds stupid. Why are we here today? Why are we really here today? Is it really about groceries? Is it really about rents? Think about it. Why are we really doing this today? My point is that we are here because we want other people to know, whoever they are, that we are of value and that we are of worth. And everybody in Bermuda, black or white, some of us have gone through a lot of hell in Bermuda over the years. And we come tonight to let people know that we are of value, we are of worth, and we are tired of people who are simply arrogant, pompous brothers, because we are all the human race. There's no such thing as racism, and I don't know why we have to keep using that word. It's white supremacy, and we are tired. So we are here tonight. There's one in the audience, there's one listening on Zoom, whatever, and I'm very disappointed at the number of people that have turned out, because you're the one out there that's grumbling, but not coming out to make a change. So I'm saying, I am glad that this meeting is taking place, because we, in this whole, because that's all I can talk about, the people in the whole, are coming out to show that we are valuable, we are worth it, and we want to change, and that you are not the only person that is supposed to benefit in this life. Well, in this country, wherever, it could be worldwide. So thank you very much, Brother Chris and the panel, for coming in. And while we listen and when we leave, I want people to remember, I am worth it. I am valuable, just like anybody else. God made all of us equal. Nobody's supposed to be living so far above that they cannot take care of their brother. It's sickening. Very, very sickening. And it's time for a change. And no, we don't want a revolution. But for me, as a Christian, those who know Bermuda in the past, we were a godly, fearing country. And right now, all we do is run after money, the love of money, thieves, a new bike, a new car. And we have kicked God out. So until we get back to our former traditions that were laid on us years ago by our parents, we're not going to get, you can have this meeting all you want. I'm not saying don't have it. But until you put God back into this, you're fighting a losing battle, because Satan is around doing whatever he can to mess us up, even now. And I also say one thing. It's nice to talk about things, but you know the problem? We cannot let the enemy know our plans. And we do that all the time. We like to talk on the radio and say our opinions and all that, but guess what? While we're saying our opinions, hoping to reach people, the enemy is in the back seat, as we know, back room, making plans to break up whatever we want to do. So we have to be very careful. Yes, thank you very much for this meeting. I'm glad we can share. But remember, without God, you're just fighting a losing battle with people that have decided to sell out to the devil. And they don't care how they do it. They don't care what they do to destroy us. So when we leave today and we get discouraged, just remember, I am valuable, I am worth it, I deserve it, because I'm a human being like anybody else. And if anybody tries to discourage you, say, no, I am worth it. I am valuable, I deserve it. And that's what I have to say tonight. Without God, you're not going to make it. We've got to return back to our foundation, the spiritual foundation.
Thank you very much. Impactful. We have a message and a question put to Brother Chris online, but maybe we'll go back in here.
No, I think we should give the person the answer to that question.
You've got your question online?
Yeah.
Let's address that.
Well, the question they've asked me to explain, if you go to the handout, page number 11, they looked at I guess they saw they may have gotten a copy of the document, but they're asking for me to explain page 11, chart number 9. This is actually the household expenditure in the blue columns, and then there are 5 workers in the other columns. We have a worker from the Poor Workers Division, a worker from the hotels, a worker from government, a worker from hospitals, and a worker from telco. Just know that, even right now, if you earn somewhere in these wages, you can understand exactly where this puts you as relates to the household expenditure, as relates to poverty. Good point. But what you see at the bottom of page number 11 is that the weekly household expenditure increased from $215 in 1974 to $1,807 in 2013, an increase of $1,591. Over that same period of time, you'll notice at the bottom of the page, the poor workers, his wage increased by $1,065. So it is actually $326 behind the household expenditure. At the top of the page, of page number 11, you'll see hotel worker, where the household expenditure increased by $1,591. The wages went up by $215, a difference of $1,376. The government employee, and pay very close attention to this one. It's very important, because the household expenditure in 2013 and 1974, 2013 went up by 1591. Their wages decreased by 1,049, so they're $542 behind. I just want you to just turn the page over to page 12 for a minute. Turn to page 12. And I want you to look at the box at the bottom left-hand corner, the yellow box. This is that same record that I just spoke about. Look at his wages. In 1974, the household expenditure was $215. His wage was $226. He covered the entire expenditure all by himself in 1974. Why? What do you hear? My weekly wage should cover my monthly rent. This is true in 1974 for this worker. Why? You could see household housing is $44.35 in 1974. If you multiply that by 4, well, you have to multiply it by 52, divided by 12. So his rent is about $192 a month. That's what his rent is. He makes $226. So his weekly wage is covered in his monthly rent. Factual. But in 2013, he is now $532 behind where he was $10 a half before. That's a $562, $52 turnaround. Because he is plus 10, now it's minus 542. And that's real. That's real time what happened to that worker who works for the Bermuda government. So this chart explains, like I said, 5 different groups of workers from in the BIUs who the BIU negotiates for, and just showing the differences in the household expenditure compared to how their wages have gone up. Now, just know, so just suppose the BIU hadn't got them better wage increases. Because remember now, the wages we got were in line with the rate of inflation. They were above the rate of inflation. But yet, they still fell behind. So if he wouldn't have got those wages, that means they'd have been farther behind. Hopefully the caller got the explanation for the question.
Thank you for the question.
Sure.
We asked at the outset, what can we do together to mitigate the high cost of living crisis in Bermuda? And as these meetings go on, we will look for some answers and some solutions from the public. We have 2 in line on the floor. Question or comment? Sir.
Oh, good evening.
Good evening.
I actually have
Come up closer to the mic. Not this way, but to the mic.
I do apologize. Are we to blame? As Bermudans, are we to blame for the situation you guys think put to the extent that somebody's got to be responsible? Now, Mr. Christopher, I appreciate you coming in. When you spoke of black and white, and Mr. Simmons spoke of Gorms. Gorms is white and red, correct? I'm just asking. I'm asking if they are, Mr. Stout. They do, Mike. Mr. Stout, they have the economics to support Delhi Town. Okay? Mr. Farber, you come on with a black and white situation. And it's about how we respond to the situation. So the younger generation, why? I just asked Mr. Richard, why didn't they have the youth connection here?
They were invited.
Yes.
They could still be involved at the next meeting.
They will be involved.
Which is Thursday.
Okay.
The time frame and their geographical locations, they were going to come on Zoom, so we are working on that. But they have agreed. Hold on, you asked a question. They have agreed to participate. We have 4 town hall meetings. They will be participating.
One of these suggestions is to keep it here. One of these suggestions is to keep it central. Because if I have to go, look, I can't get down, even though I stay down today, I can walk from there. To keep it central, it gives us like some more people to come around, because the younger generations are going to ask you questions from a white perspective and a black perspective, how we going about it as a country. the younger generation are seeing that there's some disparities, there's some biases within the white community who come and they see the money disparities when it comes to white and black work. They can look at that from that perspective, as you see. And we want some solutions. Are we blamed for this situation from a larger economic perspective? Because people get affected by this. So when it comes to black and white, and from a government point, the white community always say, oh, they're bringing up this race question. I'm just looking at it from, but Mr. Stubbs, he can understand that the whites run the business, they run the body. And I put it from this. When the young people come and say, look, we want to become an independent country, and we want to look at it, the same questions from the white and black perspective, because they feel that the
So we want now, you've got to put a question, a direct question. You're making a comment, a direct question, and so we can move on. We're in our last 15 minutes.
I'm actually going to say, the younger generation, the future adults, they want to earn the Belco. Why is Belco dumpy, barracks, are monotonous, and they're white, and they are white?
Comment?
No, but from
so we're not able to answer all of that tonight.
Not to answer the question. This is why the younger generation is going to need to get into this situation and have some responsibility from the outsiders.
All right. Listen, thank you very much for your input.
Thank you.
Yes.
Gentlemen?
This is Mr. Smith right here.
Yeah, great. A quick, short statements. Gentleman here said that we're not here to, or he's not here to start a revolution. But change doesn't come any other way. So you got to decide what you want. Okay, you're going to be nice, peace-loving Bermudians. What's happened to us all this time? Come on, people, come on. This is not difficult. The second thing, there are greater percentages of whites who are concerned about the economy than blacks, but they're not here tonight. I've counted 4, maybe 5. They are not here, but they are home worried about the economy. Let me go on. Mr. Herbert, you continue to ask the question, what are we waiting for? And you said that a few times. What are we waiting for? Now, my reply to what are we waiting for is this. When is December the 2nd going to come under the PLP? When is the union going to take back its voice along with the people's movement and stand up for you? Now, they got changed under the OBA because they stood up. When are they going to do it again? But this time it's going to be under the PLP. And if the union and the people's movement do not take back their voice, like the lady or someone else said, we're just going to be spinning in circles. All this is just fluff. Let me conclude by saying that from 2008 to 2022, 14 years, the banks have paid little or no interest on savings. And that's not been raised as a concern. In addition to that, interest rates, September they went up, they're going up again the 1st of December, and probably again in 23, they're going up again. But no one has made any noise about that. So if you are borrowing money at those rates and having to pay back at those rates, then how do you adjust your rents if you're a homeowner, when you're building homes? How do you adjust them? So people need to address some of the real concerns in the community. But we have given our allegiance to the BRU and the People's Movement to speak for us. I'm still waiting.
We will go with a quick round, beginning with President Chris.
Sure.
And then we will have any other questions from the floor. Again, I want to note that this is the first of 4 town hall meetings, so the momentum comes on Thursday at the Clearwater Middle School, and then Sands Middle School on October 18th, and then on the 25th, St. Paul's Centennial Hall back here. So there's time for your input. There's ways that you can even put advanced questions in by going on the BIU Facebook, and we will get them. But, Brother Chris.
Well, certainly to Mr. Smith's question, I think we have to appreciate that when we look at the People's Campaign in 2014, we had a series of 6 town hall meetings. 6. Centrally, we went to the east, we went to the west, we had 6 meetings. We galvanized support for issues, and the people supported those issues, and that's why we were able to be successful. Had the people not supported those issues, we wouldn't have been successful. So now, if we want to be successful about Bermuda's high cost of living, the people have to answer. So we're going to have 6 meetings, and I agree with the speaker when she said she's disappointed tonight. Well, she ain't no more disappointed than me. Because based on the social media notifying everyone about the town hall meetings either, we could find the time to protest in the streets for Pride Parade, 3,000, 5,000, 7,000 people. But we can't get 150 people, 200 people come up to a town hall meeting that talks about Bermuda's high cost of living. Extremely disappointed. Now, if we're not interested in talking about high cost of living, then fine. We're going to have our 4 town hall meetings and then make an assessment as to where we go from here. But it's about having feedback. Because I can't just stand up there and say, well, this is what we're doing. They say, well, okay, well, no input, Brother Chris, no dialogue. We're coming to the people like we did in 2014. We're coming to the people the exact same way.
Panelists?
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's obviously it's not just in Bermuda. It's all these countries are suffering from deep disillusion with the politicians across the board. It's everywhere. So there's a real problem. Democracy does not seem to be working. The politicians are not acting in the best interest of the people. So a lot of people are suggesting that what we need to do is change the form of democracy that we're practicing, and it's suggested that a big part of the problem is that we're operating this representative democracy where we vote for candidates to represent us in the House, right? We're giving them the decision-making power to make these decisions on our behalf. And there's a suggestion, and there's a reform movement worldwide. This is going on, where people are saying, "Look, what we need to do is move to some sort of hybrid of that's called representative democracy, some sort of hybrid of representative democracy and direct democracy, where the people themselves, the public, are getting involved in the really big decision making of the country." But in order for that to happen, in order for that to work, it's a lot of work goes into it. You have to be able to host events like this, and many more of them. Some of them can be online. But
before we do a 2-minute wrap-up of each panelist, any other comments or questions? And again, earlier on, Brother Chris, when I asked the objective, other than to get the feedback. And you had spoken that ultimately, at the end of all of this, you're looking to bring about a summit that would make firm recommendations from the input received at the public meeting. So we've got the last question and/or comment, and then we have a wrap-up.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I have a question for Mr. Stubbs. I would like for Mr. Stubbs to give me an honest answer, and for him to answer what is inequality and what is white supremacy. I've been studying white supremacy for 1.5 years, and it comes and it involves taxation, education, it involves entertainment, it involves racism, everything. So we're here tonight wasting time. Until we get to the point and accept racism and inequality and white supremacy, we're not going to get anywhere. That's what's keeping us bound. How can we sit here tonight or stand here tonight talking about taxes when the poor are paying most of the taxes for the rich? Come on. We are wasting our time. Mr. Stubbs, please answer that honestly, because you're the only Caucasian here that's on the stage. Please answer that, because I've read 185 books on supremacy, inequality, racism, you name it. And tonight we need to deal with all of that because it involves inequality. That's why the black have nothing and the white have everything, because we are not dealing with inequality honestly. Thank you.
Robert? Yeah, so you're absolutely right. There has been a problem with white supremacy.
I'll wait till
There's lots of problems with inequality between races, between age. The younger generation has got it a lot worse than the older generation. Future generations, the current generations, we're not, there's the inequality has just been getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And it has to be, absolutely. That's what this is all about. We need a stronger economy. We need stronger jobs. We need higher wages. All of that. We need more jobs and more wage growth at the low end. But in terms of white supremacy, I was actually on a stage with Eva Hudson, like 96, I think it was. Cure put something together. And I said to her that I completely agreed with what she was saying, the vast majority of what she was saying. That white supremacy, this ideology, was a problem. And that it was something that it infected the entire island. White or Portuguese, which is, another social classification, and black Bermudians too. And Eva Hudson totally agrees with me. She said that, I'm telling the black community all the time that they've been infected with this ideology. They've got racist attitudes towards darker people, right? So we've got lots of problems, and they're all interrelated. We've got our work cut out for us.
When?
It's going to start now, right?
That you just opened an entirely huge topic that we won't be able to get to in this meeting for sure. Mr. Markham, you are indeed our last question, comment, and please make it brief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your work as well, hosting this. But my remark would be to and the union for the amount of work. I think people need to be more appreciative of how you and the union have, and your committee have done to produce a report like this. I'm sorry I wasn't here earlier. I took a homeless person to dinner. It's a woman, senior, 71 years old. And those are vulnerable people, not just the middle class, but they're older people that are particularly being hit very hard by the high cost of living. But anyway, that wasn't really made it clear in the report and what your recommendations are. But I'm just saying that the amount of effort that has gone into the union, both capital and intellectual, must be tremendous amount of work and dedication of you and your members and your staff. And I just personally want to thank you. I come from what do you call them, blended family? But, so I'm not going to get into the issue of race. That's really kind of quite difficult, especially if you're white. And, but in any case, I think it is a separate issue in a sense, although I understand the lady who was concerned about all white people being rich. I think that's a stereotype. It's like saying all black people are poor. Well, guess what? There's a lot of more black millionaires probably in Bermuda than there is in any other country in the world, except maybe Nigeria. And I'm just saying there's a lot of them. At least I've been involved with a lot of black young people starting their own businesses, and some of the panel members know how committed I am to working with young black businessmen that are struggling to try and start a business and some of the issues that they have. And so the government is really trying. It may not be working as well as some of the supporters would like to think of, but there's a whole huge amount of effort in terms of the government is trying to find solutions to these pressing questions. And I was going to might as well ask a question while I'm up here making my remarks.
Sure.
If anybody on the panel could address this issue of the debate that's going on behind the scenes about price controls. Some people think that the issue is the government controlling prices. Other people say that if we have price controls, we just will have shortages. And I was wondering if the panel has any comments in terms of government price controls over prices in the economy, and is there any no-no areas where the government shouldn't be controlling prices? I mean, if you have a price control commission, are you going to put constraints on it? Will it be able to talk about food and the cost of chicken? Or is it going to actually be able to talk about membership fees going up every year?
Mr. Markham, that is a huge area in the control of inflation, and there's going to be broad discussion on that in our next meeting on Thursday evening, and it's a massive area in and of itself. And we've noticed that successive governments have been trotting cautiously and lightly on three different areas: immigration reform, tax reform, price control. We can explore that a bit more in our next meeting on Thursday night.
But just briefly, we have price control for fuel. I can tell you that for the past 20, 30, or 40 years, the Ministry of Finance sets the price of fuel. And whether you're a Uber station or a sales station, if they set the price of fuel at $10 a gallon, you can charge $9.99, you can charge $8.50, but you can't charge $10.01. So how come you can have price control for gasoline, but you can't have price control for everything else? I'm just saying.
Yes. So an area for further discussion. Let's take what we are doing is winding down. Let's have a question and/or comment.
Yes, you know the song, Everybody's Talking at Me, and I can't hear a word they're saying, only the echoes through my mind. Yakety, yakety, yakety.